The dusty red road coiled like a sleeping python through the heart of Umidim village, lazily giving way to the incoming convoy. It wasn't every day that the villagers heard the low hum of a Lexus engine or saw the village square light up with the shine of tinted glass and alloy rims. Children abandoned their Ojin games, chickens fled into the bush, and women selling roasted plantain stood on tiptoe to catch a glimpse. Hidon Komo, Chief Uchachukwu Don land again. Yes, the mighty Chief Uchachukwu, the man whose riches were spoken about like folklore, was back to his roots for his annual holiday. Once a poor farmer's son, now a wealthy business magnate based in Lagos, Chief Uchachukwu returned every December with his family to remind the soil that once raised him that he had made it. But this time, something was different. This year, he came not only with the usual fleet of cars or cartons of wine for the elders. He came with his wife, Lady Adiku, light-skinned, sharp-tongued, and obsessed with luxury, and his only son, Obinna, a 12-year-old boy with sagging trousers, glued to his phone, with the manners of a cracked gong. They arrived like royalty, and within days of their stay in their grand compound that stood like a palace beside the stream, Lady Adiku began to complain. "This house is too big, Uche. Why would I be the one washing plates? Even my nails are breaking," she snapped one early morning, adjusting her Brazilian wig with disgust. "We need a house help. Somebody to be running errands and cleaning." The chief sighed. "You're right. I'll speak with the village head. Maybe there's someone we can employ." That was how fate began to shift its stones. Across the other side of Umidim, in a broken mud house roofed with rusting zinc, lived a boy named Chitara, a 13-year-old whose eyes held stories deeper than his age, whose intelligence sparkled even under the weight of poverty. His parents, Matsi Afani and Maman Ngozi, once had dreams of sending their son to school, but hardship pressed them down like a heavy curse. His father had taken ill and never recovered fully. His mother hawked Ugba and Akba from dawn till dusk, just to buy gari and salt. Still, Chitara never complained. Every morning, he would clean up, walk from compound to compound offering to fetch water, sweep, or wash clothes for small change. People admired him. So humble, so smart. But admiration does not feed the belly. When the town crier announced that the wealthy Chief Uchachukwu was looking for a house help, Chitara didn't wait. He ran straight to the compound and offered himself. He was taken in immediately. The chief's house was a new world. Marble floors, big generator, satellite TV, his own room, food in abundance, and a salary his parents wept tears of joy for. But what shocked the chief more than anything else was the boy's mind. "Who taught you how to speak English like this?" the chief had asked one afternoon, stunned as Chitara corrected Obinna's math homework with ease. "I teach myself, sir. I read your son's books when I sweep the room, and I like to learn." Chief Uche was speechless. His own son could barely recite the multiplication table without sweating. From that moment, a bond began. Chief started calling him my boy. He took him to town, bought him new slippers, gave him food first, asked his opinion on things, even let him watch football with him in the parlor. Chitara reminded the chief of a younger version of himself. But not everyone was happy. Lady Attica noticed it. She began to boil with silent rage. "What is this nonsense?" she spat in Igbo one evening. "A common village boy now sits beside my husband? Even eats meat bigger than Obinna's own? Uche is losing his mind." Obinna, lazy and pampered, felt it too. "Mummy, Daddy likes that stupid boy more than me. He even says he wants to send him to school." That was when the conspiracy began. Little things. Accusations. Manipulations. "He stole my necklace." Attica would shout. "He used my perfume." Obinna would add. But every time, the chief would investigate, and somehow, Chitara was always innocent. Until one day, the greatest trap was set. The sun hung like a molten coin over Umidim, casting its golden light across the village paths and illuminating the compound of Chief Uchachukwu like a royal courtyard. But within those high cement walls, darkness brewed, a storm cloaked in silence and whispers. Since Chitara's arrival, the once disjointed household had found rhythm. The compound sparkled with cleanliness, the kitchen was organized, the garden well trimmed, and for once, Chief Uche came home with a smile, his tired limbs stretched in ease as Chitara massaged his feet with warm water and balm. "Papa Chitara," he would say, laughing as he read the newspaper under the mango tree. "This boy is a gift. a son not of my blood, but of my heart. Those words pierced Atiku's chest like daggers. Her own son, Obinna, had become more unruly. He woke up late, left his room in shambles, failed every online class, and had started sneaking money from her purse. She tried to discipline him once, but Obinna turned it into a tantrum that ended with broken plates and scattered pillows. Still, it was Chitara she hated. She hated his humility, his brilliance, his ability to win her husband's heart without trying. He must leave, she muttered to herself one night, staring into her wardrobe mirror as she removed her wig. Before he turns this house against me. So the final plot was hatched. It began innocently. Obinna, she said one afternoon as the boy licked ice cream from a plastic tub. How much do you like your PS5? I love it, he replied, eyes wide. Daddy bought it from America. And what if I told you we're going to make sure that Bush boy never touches it again? In fact, we'll make sure he never enters this house again. Obinna smiled. What will we do? We'll teach him a lesson. You'll do something for me. The plan was simple, but deadly. Attica waited until Chief Uchachukwu traveled to Aka for a business meeting. She sent Chitara to the market to buy tomatoes, peppers, and ugu. As soon as he left, she took a gold wristwatch from her husband's drawer, one he cherished greatly, and slipped it into Chitara's clothes, inside the corner of the small box where he kept his wrapper and slippers. Then, Obinna threw his game controller under the bed and turned the whole house upside down. When Chitara returned, the gate was shut, and Atticus stood like a soldier waiting for war. Where's my husband's gold watch? She barked. Chitara blinked. Ma, don't pretend. Search his things. Before he could speak, two of the house guards stormed his small boy's quarters. Within minutes, they found the watch. Jesus, Chitara exclaimed. I did not put it there. I swear I didn't. A heavy slap cut him off. It came from Attica herself. Thief. You think because my husband likes you, you can steal and get away with it? You think you are now part of this family? Useless bush boy, let me teach you a lesson you'll never forget. Obinna watched from the veranda, eyes wide with guilt, but said nothing. Within an hour, police officers from the local station arrived. Chief Uchachukwu had been called and told that his houseboy had stolen from him. Angry and ashamed, he gave the order without hearing Chitara's side of the story. Lock him up, he shouted over the phone. Let him spend some nights there. Nonsense. And like a criminal, Chitara was dragged barefoot, weeping and protesting, into the back of the police Hilux. The cell was small and dark, reeking of urine and stale sweat. Mosquitoes sang their evil hymn as Chitara shivered in a corner, his arms bleeding from the beating he received with a rubber pipe. Each blow had landed on his back with venom. He cried, not just from pain, but from betrayal. I didn't steal, he whispered, over and over. I didn't steal. In the village, news flew like palm fronds in a storm. Some whispered, it's a lie. That boy no fit steal. Others shook their heads. Poverty fit push anybody. Even the best children day change when dem see gold. But in the small compound near the stream, Mama Ngozi collapsed when she heard the news. She ran barefoot, wrapper tied tightly across her chest, to the chief's compound, shouting his name like a grieving widow. Uche, Uche, come out here. Where's my son? Attiku, who had just finished her evening pepper soup, stepped outside with a smirk. What is this noise, eh? You think this is a market square? You set him up, Ngozi wailed. You and your demon of a son. You put that watch there. Attica laughed bitterly. Now your son be thief. Accept it. We trusted him, and he disappointed us. The gate opened just as Chief Uche's car pulled in. He had returned from Aka. Seeing Mama Ngozi at the gate, crying and clapping her hands in agony, something in his chest began to tremble. Madam, go home, he said coldly. If your son dies there, it's not my fault. He's a thief. And that was when Mama Ngozi dropped the bombshell. You fool, she spat. You think you're punishing another person's child, but you are punishing your own son. The compound froze. Even the wind stopped. Chief's brow tightened. What did you say? You heard me, Uche. Chitara is your son. The child you left me with 14 years ago after you got me pregnant during that village youth seminar in Enugu. You promised to come back. You never did. I never wanted to bother you. I raised him with my husband like ours. But now I regret keeping quiet. She opened her purse and brought out an old photograph. Young Uchachukwu in jeans, arm around a young Ngozi, both smiling in front of a church building. Look well, Uche. That boy has your nose, your ears, your stubbornness. You punished your own son. Chief Uchachukwu staggered backwards. His briefcase dropped. My son, he whispered. Chitara is my blood? Atika's jaw hung loose. Obina, peeking from the balcony, felt the floor shift under his feet. Guilt, thick like harmattan fog, wrapped around the compound. The next morning, Chief went to the station in person. He saw Chitara behind bars, weak, swollen, shivering. And when their eyes met, something shattered in Chief Uchachukwu's heart. He fell to his knees. My son, he said, tears running freely. I'm sorry. I didn't know. Forgive me. But Chitara said nothing. He turned his face away. The story spread faster than chickenpox. And when Chitara was released, the village gathered to see what would happen next. The boy refused to return to the mansion. He stood before Chief Uchachukwu, his real father, and said, I don't want to live in your house. My family is my mother and the man who raised me. Build us a good house. Open a business for my mother. And take me back to school. That's all I ask. Chief nodded, tears in his eyes. I will, my son. I will. And he did. From that day, Chief Uchachukwu became a changed man. He built a big bungalow for Chitara's family. He sent him to the best school in Akka. He started a food distribution business for Mom and Gozi. And every Christmas, he visited Chitara, not as a chief, but as a father learning how to love. As for Atiku and Obina, they remained in the mansion, bitter and broken, watching the world celebrate a boy they tried to destroy. But destiny, like palm wine, always finds its true bottle. The rainy season came early that year in Umidam. Dark clouds lingered above the village for days like mourning spirits, and when they finally burst open, the heavens wept heavily, as though nature itself was washing away the shame, hurt, and betrayal that had gathered like dust around the name Chitara. But for the boy himself, this rain marked a new beginning, a cleansing, a rebirth. Gone were the days of walking barefoot to hawk sachet water or offer to sweep compounds for a handful of naira. Gone were the nights of eating white Gary with nothing but hope to swallow it down. That chapter of his life had closed like a book drenched in tears. Now he stood on the edge of a new world, a boy with the face of a commoner but the heart of royalty. Chief Uchachukwu was a man of his word. The guilt of nearly destroying his own flesh and blood haunted him daily. No amount of sleepless nights or public donations could take the shame from his shoulders. The villagers no longer looked at him the same. Children stopped shouting his name when his cars drove past. Elders greeted him with stiff nods instead of warm embraces. Even his chieftaincy title began to sound like mockery in his ears. So he poured himself fully into restoring what he had broken. He built a 6-room bungalow for Mama Ngozi and her husband at the edge of the village, furnished it with Italian tiles and imported cushions from Onitsha main market. He stocked her new provision store with bags of rice, cartons of milk, sugar, noodles, and everything a mother's hands could trade for gold. But most importantly, he enrolled Chitara in one of the best secondary schools in Akka, St. Michael's Model School, a place known for molding leaders, the same school senators and commissioners sent their children to. Chitara was given everything: books, uniforms, a laptop, pocket money, and even a small phone to keep in touch. But more than all the material gifts, he was given a chance. And that was all Chitara ever needed. The first day at St. Michael's was both dazzling and terrifying. Tall gates, tall buildings, children in polished shoes who spoke fluent English, wore wristwatches that cost more than his family's entire income in a year, and carried lunchboxes filled with foreign snacks he only saw in supermarket displays. They laughed loudly, talked about vacations abroad, boasted about the latest iPhones. He stood alone at the assembly ground, wearing a perfectly ironed uniform, yes, but with old shoes still carrying the dust of Umidam. He could feel their eyes crawling over him, their whispers wrapping around him like chains. But what they didn't know was that this boy had survived worse than gossip. Within weeks, Chitara began to rise. He topped his class. His essays were read aloud by teachers. His spoken English stunned the principal. Even the seniors who once mocked him now asked for his help during assignments. He became known as Professor Local, a nickname they gave him with laughter, but later, with respect. Back in Umidam, Chief Uchachukwu tried everything to reconnect. He sent messages, gifts, cards, even came to the new house once with Obina, carrying a goat and 2 crates of malt. But Chitara never stayed long during visits. He would greet his father calmly, thank him politely, and return to sit beside the man who raised him, his true father, Matsiafani, who now used a walking stick but still held the boy's hand with pride in his eyes. Ataku, who once ruled the mansion like a queen, had become a prisoner in her own home. Her husband barely spoke to her. Her friends in the women's meeting now gossiped behind her back, calling her the one who fought her husband's blood. Even Obina began to distance himself, burying himself in phone games and loud music, unable to bear the reality of his fading glory. The poison of envy had returned to haunt them. Meanwhile, Chitara's success in school grew like wildfire. He won debate competitions, spelling bees, and even represented the school in Abuja, returning with a national award for young writers. When his picture appeared in the local newspaper, Chief Uchichukwu carried it to every elder's house in Umadam like a trophy. "He's my son," he would say proudly, puffing his chest. "That's my blood there." The elders would nod and smile, but behind closed doors, they whispered, "Was he your son when he was locked in the cell? When his back was bleeding?" Shame was a coat Chief Uche wore daily now, no matter how expensive his wrapper was. By the time Chitara reached SS3, he was a school hero, respected, admired, loved. One day, during speech and prize-giving day, the principal called him to the podium. The entire school watched as he walked forward, calmly, holding his certificate of excellence. But before taking the microphone, he turned to the crowd and said, "This award is not mine alone. It belongs to the woman who hawked Ugba with me, the man who taught me respect, and the pain that taught me how to be strong. I am not a lucky boy, I am a fighting one, and I will keep fighting." The hall erupted in applause. The principal shook his hand and said, "Young man, you are headed for greatness." After WAC and JAM, Chitara scored so high that he was offered a full scholarship to study law at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. His story was featured on radio stations, and a journalist from Lagos even visited Umadam to interview his family. He had become a light that no darkness could cover. And then, one day, something happened that no one saw coming. It was December again. Harmattan winds blew through the village, and Chief Uchichukwu returned, as usual, this time older, quieter, and more humble. His compound was quiet now. No parties, no fleet of cars, just him, his Bible, and his thoughts. He sent for Chitara. This time, Chitara came alone. He sat opposite the man who once called the police on him and looked into his father's tired eyes. "I want to write my will," Chief Uchichukwu said softly. "I want you to help me draft it." "You want me to help you share your property?" Chitara asked. "Yes," the chief nodded. "Because I trust you to be fair." Chitara was silent for a long time. Then he said, "I will help you, but make sure you don't just divide houses and land. Share peace, share forgiveness, share truth. That's the only legacy worth leaving." Tears rolled down Chief's cheeks. And so, the boy who once swept the compound became the one who wrote his father's final wishes. Not as a servant, not even as a son, but as a man. The wind that swept across Umadam in the year Chitara graduated from the university was different. It carried not just dust or the familiar scent of roasted maize, but a sense of something new, a shift in time, a whisper among the ancient Irako trees that a forgotten seed had grown into a mighty tree, and its branches were spreading across the land. From the moment the news broke that Barrister Chitara Uchichukwu had graduated top of his class from the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, and had just been called to the Nigerian bar, the entire village erupted into a celebration that even the ancestors must have danced to in their graves. He was no longer just the intelligent houseboy, or the village boy with broken slippers and bright eyes. No, Chitara had become a living testimony of what destiny can do when pride is swallowed and truth is embraced. And the entire village could not stop talking. "Do you know he's the first lawyer from our village to get first class?" one elder said at the palm wine joint. "They say he's going to work with one big human rights organization in Abuja," another added. "Chai, his mother is reaping the fruits of her labor," a market woman whispered, adjusting her head tie. "Yes, Mama Ngozi, who once sold Ugbo with cracked heels and dusty feet, now walked with grace. She wore well-fitted Ankara and gold-rimmed glasses. Her shop had turned into a mini supermarket, and her husband, though still with his walking stick, sat at the front every evening, proudly greeting anyone who passed with the words, 'Have you heard? That's my son, the lawyer. Chief Uchachukwu, now older and slower, had grown quieter over the years. The once flamboyant man who scattered Naira notes at village meetings now sat under the mango tree with a copy of his Bible, a pair of glasses, and long sighs. His businesses had faced challenges. His popularity had declined. But his greatest treasure was no longer wealth or titles. It was a second chance. He and Chitara had built a cautious relationship over the years. One that began with stiff greetings and long silences, but matured into late-night talks, soft chuckles, and shared prayers. But Chitara never called him Papa. He simply called him Chief. And that was enough for the old man. Obinna, on the other hand, was now in his mid-20s, lost in the shadows of bitterness and envy. He had failed WAC twice, dropped out of Polytechnic after his third semester, and had no skill to hold on to. He blamed the world. He blamed his mother. He even blamed Chitara. He came and stole everything. He once yelled during an argument with Atiku. If not for him, I would be the one with the money and the praise. Atiku, now a ghost of her former self, sat in silence. Her wigs no longer shone. Her once perfect nails were chipped. Her friends had abandoned her. And even her marriage was now a thing only kept alive by the name they shared. She had destroyed her own house with jealousy, and now it lay in ruins. When the Umadam Annual Youth Festival Committee invited Chitara as the guest speaker, it was a moment of reckoning. The village square was cleaned days in advance. Palm fronds were tied to bamboo poles. Canopies were erected. Drummers began rehearsing, and banners were hung with bold letters that read, "Welcome home, Barrister Chitara Uchachukwu, the pride of Umadam." He arrived that morning in a modest black car, not flashy but elegant. Dressed in a white senator outfit with red embroidery, he walked into the square with Mama Ngozi on one side and Matsi Afani on the other. The applause that greeted them thundered across the trees. Men stood to clap. Women knelt with pride. Children stared in awe. Even Chief Uchachukwu stood up slowly from his seat in front and bowed slightly when Chitara approached. He took the microphone, and for a moment, all that could be heard was the rustle of the wind and the distant bleating of a goat. Then he began to speak, not like a lawyer, not like a politician, but like a son of the soil. "I stand before you today," he said, "not as a miracle, but as a reminder that inside every boy selling pure water on your street, there may be a doctor, that every girl washing clothes for your wives might become a governor's wife, that the ones we neglect in our houses are the ones God may bless tomorrow." Some of you knew me as the house help in Chief's house. Some of you remember how I was dragged to the police station like a thief. But what most of you don't know is that the greatest blessing in my life was not money or connection, it was pain. Pain taught me to fight, and love gave me strength. The love of my mother, the love of a man who raised me like his own, and eventually, the forgiveness of the one who gave me life. He paused. The crowd was silent. Some wiped tears. Others nodded solemnly. Then he turned to look at Chief Uchachukwu, and for the first time in public, he said, "Chief, Papa, thank you for making it right." The old man burst into tears. And with that, the entire village stood and clapped. Long, hard, proudly. It was no longer just a festival. It was redemption. After the event, as the sun began to set over Umadam and the air filled with the scent of jollof rice and roasted goat meat, Chitara sat alone at the edge of the stream where he once fetched water for coins. He looked into the water and smiled. That water had seen him in torn shirts. It had seen him weep. And now, it saw him triumphant. Behind him, Obinna stood silently, watching. He had come, not to fight or insult, but to seek closure. Chitara turned. They locked eyes. For a moment, nothing was said. Then Obinna dropped his gaze and muttered, "I'm sorry for everything." Chitara nodded. "I forgave you a long time ago. You were just a child. We all were." And with that, something unspoken was healed. Years passed. Chitara opened his own law firm in Abuja, specializing in defending the poor, the falsely accused, and the forgotten. He began sponsoring scholarships for village children, ensuring no other Chitara would miss school because of poverty. His name was sung in town meetings. His story was taught in local schools. His presence was respected in every home. And every December, when he returned to Umadam, he didn't stay in the chief's mansion. He stayed in the house he built beside his mother's, where laughter echoed from the walls and love flowed without condition. He had become a man of two fathers, but more importantly, a father to many, giving the same opportunity he once cried for to others like him. And so, the boy who once swept the veranda of the rich became the light of an entire generation. Not because he was born lucky, but because he chose to rise when the world tried to bury him. And in the quiet breeze of Umadam, where the mango trees still whispered, the streams still flowed, and the red sand still hugged bare feet, the story of Barrister Chitara Uchichukwu was told. The boy who was beaten, broken, and forgotten, yet rose to become the pride of a village that almost let him die.